This is another multiple choice question. This one is about economies of scale. So economies of scale occur when a producer or a firm increases output and, so it's asking what happens. Now in the exam, you need to make sure, you hope that when you go into the exam, you understand what economies of scale are and you have that in your mind before you look at the answers because they might try and confuse you with the answers. Let's just go through quickly what economies of scale are. That if you have economies of scale, it means as output goes up, costs per unit go down. There are lots of different types of economies of scale. You can have financial economies of scale, purchasing economies of scale, managerial economies of scale. Let me just give you an example of one here. Managerial economies of scale. This would mean that you've got lots of people working in your head office. And let's imagine that in the head office, imagine you're paying them £100 per day. These are your management costs for your business. You've got to pay £100 a day for the people working in your head office. If you have scenario A and you're making 2 units of output per day, that will mean that your management costs of £100 a day have to be divided by 2 units. So the management costs per unit will be 100 divided by 2, which equals £50 per unit. This is if you're making 2 units of output per day. If you had a situation where you can increase your output, let's imagine now that you can make 4 units of output per day. That will now mean that your management costs per unit are going to be £100 divided by, now you're making 4 units every day. So you're dividing these management costs by 4 units rather than just 2 units. So you're dividing £100 by 4 units, which equals £25 of management costs per unit. This illustrates really clearly that as your output goes up, your costs per unit go down. As I say, this is an example just about managerial economies of scale, but you could apply the same reasoning to lots of different types of economy of scale. Now we've got that established, we can look at the answer. Economies of scale occur when a producer increases output, we know that's going to happen, and average costs fall. It looks as if this is the answer, because remember, average costs equal total costs divided by output. That's what we've been doing over here. Our total management costs, for example, were £100 a day. We divided them by output 2. Then we imagined our output went up, but our management costs were still only £100. You don't need to have more people in the head office just because you're making more units in, say, your factory. So it was still £100, but then it was divided by 4. So average costs are total costs divided by output. We can therefore see that when our output goes up from 2 to 4, our costs per unit fall from 50 to 25 in this example. So average costs fall. It looks as if that's the right answer. Let's check the other ones. As a producer increases output, it gets existing staff to work overtime. We don't know anything about this. This is other information. We can't assume that that's the case. And also, economies of scale, the whole point is you've got the same amount of people working. You just produce more output. So that's wrong. Next one. When a producer increases output, it pays more for its raw materials. No, there's no reason why that would be happening. And this isn't what economies of scale are about. This is actually about, it's referring to purchasing economies of scale. But actually, if you buy larger quantities and your output is going up, the cost per unit will probably go down because you can negotiate lower prices per unit when you buy from your supplier. So they won't pay more for their raw materials, they'll pay less. The last one, economies of scale occur when a producer increases output and takes on more workers. Again, no. The point of this is that the thing that changes is the amount of output, but other costs stay the same. And if your total costs stay the same, but your output goes up, your average costs must go down. Therefore, the answer here is A.